you've ever had interest in opening a brewery of your own, I suggest you watch this video. I had the pleasure of sitting down with my good buddy, Jeff Young. He happens to be the owner of a brewery here in Austin, Texas called Blue Owl. They opened in 2015, and a couple of weeks ago, they announced on social media that they were going to be putting the brewery up for sale. This was a pretty bold move to announce this via social media, because it's not something that typically happens in this industry, but it was met with quite a bit of interest and other people wanting to hear the story. So I wanted to sit down with him and share the story on the channel, as well as open it up to some new eyeballs that if somebody out there is interested in buying a brewery or getting into the beer industry, this is one of many opportunities that are out there. And so in this video, we just dive into kind of the logistics of running this brewery model and the ups and downs throughout the years. So let's dive right into the interview with me and Jeff. Hello, welcome. This is an interview with Jeff Young, the owner, founder of Blue Owl Brewing in Austin, Texas. And today we're going to talk about why he's selling his brewery and why you should buy it. Not specifically you, but if you're interested, then maybe you can buy it. But I just wanted to talk to Jeff. Jeff is one of my best friends. He was the brewer at Black Star when I started working there and kind of taught me everything I know in the beer industry, and then went on to open Blue Owl Brewing. I went on to open Tanglefoot. And yeah, so lots of beer stuff in the last, 15 years, but he owns a brewery currently in Austin that specializes in sour mash beers, Blue Owl Brewing, and he's looking to sell it. And so I wanted to pick his brain and see what went into the decision behind wanting to sell it and what kind of the ideal scenario is for him. So without further ado, Jeff Young.
What's up? Yay.
That's it. So yeah, first things first, I wrote down a few notes, and they're not many notes, but I wanted to first kind of just get like your background, your story. I know you, they don't know you.
Yeah. No, that's good. In general, I came to Austin for the second time in 2006, and that's when I'd just gone to brewing school. And when I got here, one of my buddies introduced me to a group of other folks that were interested in starting up a cooperative pub in Austin. So I went to that first meeting of everybody, and we were going around introducing ourselves, and I'm Jeff, and how about we make it a brew pub? So from then on out, for the next 4 years, we planned for Black Star Co-op as a cooperative pub and brewery. And once it finally opened in 2010, I got my little dream come true of actually running my own brewery. And I think within the first year or so is when I met you. First year or two?
Second year.
Second
yeah, so
year.
2012.
2012. So brewed there for, in some degree for 4 or 5 years before, which, if you put all that together, that's almost 10 years, maybe 9 years of kind of working on Black Star. So around that time, I got together with somebody else that worked at Black Star named Susie, who was in the business team. And we kind of drunkenly came up with the idea of focusing a brewery on sour beers, which were all the rage at or maybe was like at the onset of being the range. That was back when Berliner Weisses.
It was like 2013, right?
2013, 2014 is when we started talking about it. So we had a beer called Waterloo, which was a Berliner Weiss there. And I was just very fascinated in the idea of how to make sour beers. But then also, if you can make, like a Berliner Weiss, can you apply that same production to any other beer? So, you'll still see at Black Star some various kind of sour beers of different forms and different ways that were like explorative beers back then that essentially came, some of the initial beers from Blue Owl Brewing. So left Black Star in 2014-ish and started working on Blue Owl. And about a year and a half later, we found a place in East Austin and got all of our equipment, got investors, got everything together to start the brewery of a Blue Owl. And I think it was 2015 was the initial like opening.
Yeah.
That's when we opened, and for the first 6 to 7 years we were just 100% sour beer and focused on some really kind of novel souring techniques and novel sour beer styles, and really a fun kind of explorative project. Pandemic hit, and people's tastes adapt and change, and brewers sometimes kind of lead the pack or sometimes just follow what current trends are. And during the pandemic, everybody was trying to figure out how to stay relevant in really weird changing times. So, we expanded to seltzers, to eventually non-sour beers, which was really fun, because after 7 or so years of focusing on making sour beers, we got to go back to a little bit of our roots and make just some solid standard beer styles that pretty ubiquitous, but things that we just haven't been able to brew because we've been focusing on the sour styles. So then since the pandemic, it's been about trying to run and grow both of those brands, the sour brand and the non-sour brand, which kind of leads us up to now in the current industry, and where we're at as a business and as two humans that run a brewery, and the stuff going on in our lives, and where we want to go from here. So that's maybe the rundown of all that.
Yeah. Great recap. It's also, to clarify, it's 2024 October now. So that's almost 10 years of owning a brewery in Austin, plus the Black Star years. But so before we move on to other questions, I want to crack a beer, specifically this one. So this beer, this isn't really like a promo or anything, but this is Spirit Animal. This is my favorite beer that they make, and more of nostalgia, because I remember when I was working at Black Star, Jeff was trialing all these like sour beer recipes, and the coolest thing back in 2013 that we ever did was like adding hops to sour beer. And specifically, we ended up doing a collaboration that was like a double IPA that was hopped pretty heavily, but just like it was such a unique point in time where that wasn't really happening. Other people weren't doing it, but I remember really, really enjoying it. And what was the name of that beer? Dr. Vainglory. Dr. Vainglory. So throwback to anybody that was around Black Star at that time. Cheers. What are you drinking?
Cheers. So I'm going to go with the Bob's side of things. For all the clever people out there, Bob's is Blue Owl Brewing, an acronym. It's our kind of way to distinguish between our sours and our non-sours. So the Bob Fine beers are the non-sours, and then the classic Blue Owl Brewing beers are the sours. So this is a kind of it's a juicy IPA that we designed very much for ourselves as we went out drinking on the east side, and very warm temperatures, and being able to throw back a few without getting too shit-faced, but still with packing a lot of the juicy hops that you like.
There you go. So obviously started as a sour brewery and now are making cleaner beers. What was other than consumer taste changing, what was the main impetus behind doing that? Was it like financial, like you needed to sell more beer, or was it
shifting to non-sour?
Yeah, bring more non-sour beer.
It's a good question, and it's hard to pinpoint down to like one particular decision or time, because it did develop over time. Like we've had people saying we should make non-sour beers, practically since we opened. And of course we want to. It's not like we're mad at non-sour beers. There was just so much to explore on the sour side. And of course we haven't fully explored it. It's still tons of things out there to explore, but we have really delved into a lot of different avenues of what it means to be sour, and here's my first burp, and what you can do with acidification on the sour side. But there was let's just take an example of just people coming into the tap room, and maybe there's 4 of them and 3 of them been there before and they really liked it. So they wanted to bring their 4th friend or something. And the 4th friend's like, I don't want a sour beer. I'm not into that. I just want an IPA. So like, we get that. So you get that 100 or 1,000 times. And of course, like you empathize with that and say like, yeah, it'd be nice to have an IPA here. So, again, it wasn't like this huge, like, and now we're doing non-sour. It was more of like, okay, yeah, I kind of want to make I think our first was like a Pilsner. And then, and then we're like, yeah, I kind of just want to make our own kind of hoppy beer. So then, after a few iterations of those initial beers, they were doing really well. I was like, well, let's kind of put this together into a common brand and figure out what that brand is. And it's gone through some iterations over the years, but it's turned into what it is here, which is like very, I mean, you could say classic. I don't know, classic isn't the best word for it, but just more standard beer styles.
Yeah,
just
like traditional takes on beer style.
Yeah. We're not trying to do anything crazy because it's like we've been doing crazy for years. It would be nice just to like not do a crazy beer.
I think that sums up craft beer in general, honestly, in the last 10 years is that we've done crazy for 10 years, but now we just want a fucking beer. Just give me something that aligns with what you called it. So throughout that journey of you opened this brewery in Austin, it's pretty great success by all metrics. Initially, everybody was anticipating the brewery opening, and you hit your peak years. You sell, what was like your total barrelage, your max barrelage?
Peaked a little over 3,000.
And then your capacity is
a little over 3,000. Yeah, so we were just one in, one out kind of thing.
So brewery built to produce like 3,000-ish barrels, hit capacity primarily with sour beer, right?
All with sour
all
beer.
Sour beer. And then what years did you see kind of like the tide shift to where maybe it wasn't hitting capacity? You're looking to maybe add more styles, different.
I mean, all that happened in 2020 when, the whole world kind of changed with the pandemic. That was when we were having the best months that we had ever had. We were still kind of like riding that wave up. And it was more like the sudden change, obviously, of the pandemic, but then also within the next year or so, just like what I would say sudden in this sense kind of changes in what people are doing. So not even so much their tastes, but like where they're getting beer and why they're getting beer, because they're stuck at home and they're getting, 6-packs from HEB curbside or something like that. Or, the trends, you couldn't really pick out a trend during that time because everything was just going crazy. So there was no baseline. And that was one of the more frustrating things during that time, was just like, you couldn't plan for anything.
Yeah.
You couldn't like say, well, sales are getting a little bit lower on sours, so we need to either focus a little more on that or go down a different avenue. It was just kind of like, it's fucking chaos. And you're just trying to figure out how to get through it and picking an avenue and living with it. And then the next day, maybe picking another avenue and living with it.
Yeah. And I remember at the beginning of COVID, you and several other people kind of shared with me, it was also kind of an okie doke in the sense of like, it's a misdirection, that there was a ton of can sales initially in COVID. It was just this huge increase in package sales because people couldn't go anywhere, so they went home to drink. And so everybody was kind of under this impression like, yeah, things are going okay, and we're selling a lot of beer. But then taproom's done. All the other like kegs are done, not done, but like significantly reduced. People aren't going out to bars. So yeah, weird time. So then all those challenges aside, tell me about like what technically is the kind of the outline of Blue Owl. Like you own a 30-barrel brew house in East Austin on Cesar Chavez. You have a tap room. What's the breakdown of the business, like the technical specs?
Yeah, I mean, from just a purely technical aspect, it is a production brewery, a 30 barrel steam brew house brewery with 4 barrel tanks and one 60 barrel tank with a wild goose 5 head canning line and all the fixings that go along with it, the keg washer and forklift and boiler and all that kind of stuff. So it's really just a well-functioning brewery that exists on the east side, and we have a tap room. The tap room's kind of small. We designed it at a time when there was kind of an explosion going on, and people were building bigger and more open kind of places. So our tap room is a little smaller, but we got patio space, and we got like 16 taps right now. Just all of our own things. So in general, it's almost like any other kind of brewery out there that's looking to do two things, and this is kind of important, is like the distribution route and the on-site taproom route, because you could pick one or the other and try to focus on that, and some breweries have done that, and they've there's pros and cons to both of those things. But with Blue Owl, the idea was always to have both and to be able to adapt with the times. And when tap rooms close, well, we had a 5 head canning line, and yeah, we were making more beer than we'd ever made, but it was all through our canning line, which happens to be a slightly lower margin, or maybe more than slightly lower margin than like on-site kind of stuff. So adaptability, we have it, but you can't adapt to everything, and
Yeah.
it's a matter of adapting to whatever kind of comes up at that point, and it's just going to change, and other things are going to come along.
So in your initial business plan, when y'all opened in this location, which by the way, for the viewers that aren't familiar with Austin, their location is on East Cesar Chavez, which was once kind of, like a neighborhood, not a lot of commerce going on, but now has a lot more to offer. There's restaurants, there's other breweries in the near vicinity. So like a lot more stuff has popped up since y'all opened. But what was the initial breakdown in the business plan of like taproom sales versus distro? Like, did it pencil out where like, oh, we just need a little bit of traffic in the tap room, and how's that changed?
That's a good question. I don't remember what the actual plans, like the projection of what it would be, because projections in the craft beer over the last 20 years have just been.
Or what were your assumptions, just personally?
I don't even remember the assumptions, but I will tell you what it turned out to be. And it turned out to be weirdly like 50-50. As far as gross profit goes, we were making just as much from the tap room as we were from the production side of things. For example, maybe in a good month, like gross profit 50,000 in the tap room and 50,000 in production. So within those individual things like production and tap room, you also have, well, in production, was it draft or was it packaged, packaged beers? In the tap room, was it to go? Was it food? Was it merchandise? Was it just beers? So within each one of those things, there's a lot of breakdowns too. So, it was less about trying to very accurately figure out what those things were, and more about just trying to make all those avenues be optimized and make sure they're, making the money they can.
When you were planning for the allocation of space, was it, obviously, like there's maybe a quarter of the space dedicated to tap room, seating, and then 3/4 to production. Was it kind of like tap room will be a portion of the business, probably obviously more profit margin than distribution, but was it kind of not an afterthought, but just like a smaller portion of the business model, or was that always intended to be, close to 50-50 gross profit margin?
I don't know. I don't know. That was about 10 years ago, and everything was kind of different back then. And I don't fully remember like what we were imagining it was going to break down to be, because whatever we thought it was going to be was very quickly disrupted by just the reality of the times and the idiosyncrasies of those various revenue streams. And, sometimes we were a little down on our tap room because it was just like, we're not getting the events to get people in. So we were focusing more on production. So there was never like some ideal case. It was more of about building a system robust enough that we could adapt as different things kind of come up or popular.
This video is brought to you by Blue Owl Brewing, specifically in order to sell Blue Owl Brewing. This is a virtual rundown of this cute brewery just minutes east of downtown Austin. Yes, this is a Blue Owl Brewery themed brewery. It's got a lot of blue owls as well as some wooden fixtures, but really cute tap room. Lots of heart and soul went into building this tap room. You get a nice merch section here on the right as well as your to-go beer on display. Outdoors, we've got some seating, a nice awning, shaded area to enjoy all the beers you're going to enjoy here with a lot of taps to suit whatever beers you're interested in drinking. Sour and non-sour beers are all produced with this 30-barrel Premier Stainless brew house. This is the lab to ensure high-quality beer is produced. Here are all your valves that you're going to turn in order to produce that beer and make this stuff flow in the direction that you want it to flow in. As soon as you walk on top of the brew house deck, you're going to see a bunch of buttons. Don't press any of these buttons. All of them make the brew house explode. I'm just kidding. That's what controls the whole brew house. This is the mash tun. Those are the rakes. This is the brew house steam vent. This is the brew kettle right here where you boil the wort. And here is a little bird's eye view, or an owl's eye view rather, of the whole brewery on sort of an offset, not really stable shot here. We're going to peer down into the cellar and kind of look at the concrete from above and cut real hard into this can storage area with a bunch of other stuff stored, and quickly pan over to this 5-head Wild Goose canning line, which cans up all your beer. Here's a big 60-barrel fermentation vessel. Here are 2 30-barrel bright tanks. And to the left, we've got the 4 30-barrel fermentation vessels, which are the primary fermentation vessels in the brewery. And to the left of those, you have a 60-barrel hot liquor tank and a 60-barrel cold liquor tank so that you can heat up water and cool down water for your brewing needs. There are some various pieces of equipment that are included in this brewery sale, including this 2-head Premier Stainless keg washer and this beautiful forklift. You need a forklift in a warehouse brewery, don't you? And over here, tucked away amongst all of the cans and IBC totes, you've got this powerhouse glycol chiller, and that's what keeps the entire system running cool and the beer maintained at certain temperatures. You also have a nice bulk CO2 tank right in front of that, and the piece de resistance, the beer gas pump. Here's the heart of the brewery. This is the steam generation unit. That's what heats up everything in the brewery so that you can brew beer. And here we've got parts that are stored on the wall, clean and tidy. And the coldest area in the brew house, the walk-in cooler. This is where you store all of your finished product. Lots of cases of beer can fit in here. It's a little tight, but you got kegs and cases of beer, so it's kind of packed to the brim all the time. And some various beers that have been dropped off by other breweries. One of the perks of being in the industry here, those are the draft beer lines that go out to the tap room. And the man, the myth, the legend, Jeff Young himself, fixing the brewery up to get it in good shape for you to buy it. You go through all of these phases of opening a brewery, which, just to share some more context, took way longer than you expected. I remember that. You opened the brewery, you had a lot of issues with the tap room as far as getting it licensed and permitted to be able to sell. Like for the first several years of being in business, you couldn't sell a pint of beer to the customer, just like different hurdles, but you made it through 9 years. So ultimately, what was the deciding factor to decide to sell or attempt to sell to somebody?
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing up all these problems that happened that now I've just kind of like pushed to a dark corner of my life. Yeah, like I don't remember any of that shit. I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, given any of those problems back in the day, we always just kind of adapted and we weren't able to sell a single pint of beer for the first 7 years or something, and we were maxed out on capacity. And so it's kind of like, yeah, that was a problem. But was it really? Because we were maybe it was limiting us in some way, but also we were doing great. So it's more about looking at whatever instant in time we're in now, and so kind of moving forward to where we're on now, and that's 10 years down the road. And I have a business partner named Susie who came from Black Star with me, and we're in different places in our life right now. And there's, the business aspects itself, which are challenging, and we need to figure out a way to, adapt the business to be more sustainable moving forward. But there's also the personal aspects of just maybe being a little burnt out about, from COVID times, from the pandemic, because that was so much like mental trauma of trying to keep your business operating in very stressful times. And when you come out of it and you're thinking things are going to go back to normal, and they kind of don't, there's a new normal, then there's, like almost a new trauma of like trying to wrap your head around like, oh, this is the new world now. This is how, what I'm up against. And we maybe don't have it in us anymore. And I think that is definitely part of it. You can look at the finances and you can look at the industry, but you also got to look at the people that are running it. And, do we have the energy to give it the effort that it needs? No. But I think somebody does. I think there are people out there that are in a position that they are eager and want to take advantage of these downturns to their advantage, to do the things that they want to do, the plans that they have, the visions of breweries that they have. And that's why, I've never been like, in it for the money per se. And me, I've always been very about the creation of the beer. And I think there are people that still want to do that. But given the current climate in the industry, they also kind of know what they're up against and can maybe more adequately be prepared for it. So that's what we're looking for in a buyer is somebody who has the passion for brewing, but also the understanding of the industry and has some good ideas on how to capitalize on it. That's what we hope.
Yeah. So that was actually the impetus behind like doing this sit down, was that I agree. I think that for all of the stuff that I say on the channel about warning people against getting into the beer industry or starting production breweries or whatever it is, from a financial perspective, I and many other people like me were going to start a brewery no matter what. Like we were going to do it. And there are great opportunities for people that are either looking to get out of the industry or unfortunately are closing and like assets are being foreclosed on. Like that now is like a time where there's a lot of people shifting. And so you can buy a brewery, start a brewery for less than it costs to buy equipment. So I wanted, in this section or whatever you want to call it, I wanted to talk about what were the kind of initial costs of opening the brewery and how is that different now? Like what would the build out cost be? What would the cost of the equipment that you currently have be? What would the rent, all that stuff be if you were to say, I want to start Blue Owl or comparable brewery in this location in Austin today in 2024?
Yeah, that's a big question. And, I also do a little bit of consulting, as you know, with you. Mm-hmm. And we've seen other breweries that are trying to open up now and looking at what these costs are, the construction costs, the just lease or just the cost of the property and equipment costs. Everything that goes into it is just more expensive than what it was back then. But what's maybe good about it is when we got into it back in the day, there was a lot of opportunity, but we were also on maybe that kind of like meteoric rise of popularity where everybody was getting into it, and there was an instability of what to expect with the whole things. As much as we thought we knew what 5 years or 10 years was going to be down the road, I think at least now there's a little more stability kind of in the market because it's matured a bit. So, as far as like trying to put numbers on it, I think with Blue Owl, we might have spent over the course of the 9 years that we got into it, about $600,000 worth of equipment. I don't even know how to measure like how much of into infrastructure and because some of that's taken care of in our tenant improvement agreement. So there's a lot, it's hard to kind of put numbers on these things, but it would not be surprising to say what we did 10 years ago for whatever $600,000, $800,000 would be $1.4, $1.5 million now. And a lot of it's just very dependent on the location. You can say equipment is cheaper because of a lot of closings.
Closing,
you have access to auctions where you can get a lot of cheap equipment, and that's great. But what that's missing is probably one of the more costly parts, one of the more hidden prices or costs, and that's like shipping, installation, and construction to get an operational brewery. There's so much money that goes into just pouring concrete pads and pulling electrical, that if those things are done for you and you could just walk in and start brewing a beer on day one, there's so much value in that right now. And that's kind of like, again, where I almost get excited for somebody else.
I feel the same way. It's so weird. We did a walkthrough, as you'll see some of this B-roll today that I'm going to put in this video, but we did a walkthrough of Blue Owl, and I'm just sitting there thinking like, oh yeah, my buddy's selling his brewery, whatever, like let's make some videos. But it works. And that's like not something that actually is consistent in the beer world. And you can make 3,000 plus barrels of beer. And it's a weird thing coming from the industry where you're like, there's always problems. But the one thing that is not the problem in this scenario is like a location that's built out for brewing beer, that brews beer efficiently, that is staffed. So anyways, I do think that that's a huge value proposition in like, selling to the next generation. And I do think that there's going to be somebody that is like the right fit. But what are some of the kind of the hurdles in the industry, the hesitations, like we know like why it's not ideal to start a production brewery right now. But what do you think are some of the hurdles with getting into this business model? And then how do you see somebody that takes over the business succeeding? What's the path for them to succeed?
Yeah, it has to be taken very seriously on, we have formed a baseline right now of what we're doing and what you can do with what we have. And I think having a super good understanding of what it's going to take to actually like increase those things and succeed and become a sustainable brewery in these tough times is like, that's what, Susie and I want just as much as we want to kind of move on and do other things. So we've made kind of lists and descriptions of almost like these wish lists of, here's what it would take, we think, to get us to the next level. And why don't we just do those things? Well, partly it's the costs that we don't have, the kind of capital that we don't have in reserves anymore that somebody else might have, as well as just kind of uh, the excitement and motivation to actually make those things work, because they can work. Like, there are proven methods on how to sell more beer, and there's certain things you need to do to get to that. So illustrating what those things are, and kind of passing the torch in it with an understanding of these are the things, is where we're at right now. So just to kind of touch on a couple of those things is having a dedicated sales team. When we got into it, like, big breweries had sales people, but smaller breweries, especially if you weren't self-distributing, didn't necessarily have like a well-defined sales force. And of course, they're expensive. It's expensive to have a sales force, but the returns on it over time have definitely seemed like they're worth it.
So the hurdle in that is it's labor intensive, time intensive to get a person out on the ground selling beer to accounts, right?
Yeah. So it's costly, and you got to make it pay for itself, which takes some excitement, hiring the right person, but it's almost a guaranteed thing. Like, you have to have that in the market right now. And some of the people that I've seen that are still doing really well and growing and exceeding have a great distribution sales kind of platform that they're working off of. And that's just not something that we have right now, or can get in the near future. So having a strong sales force, or at least somebody that like is willing to put the time in to develop a strong force. And then the other thing so obviously, like, the sales force kind of comes with greater production sales. Well, on the tap room, going back to the other side of the bifurcation, is having a good taproom manager that can drive revenue, that can get people coming to their site. In the area we're in, there's plenty of people over there. We walked out today, and La Barbecue, I think because of ACL, like, they have a line around their door, so it's they're right across the street from us. So people are coming to this place, to this area. We just need to give them a reason to come to our place, to the Blue Owl tap room. So it's more of a sales side thing for generating the revenue. The other side, the other opportunity there that's kind of missing, is potentially developing another brand, or extending the brands that we already have to be more adaptable to more recent trends with IPAs and pilsners, which we have an IPA or pilsner, but maybe we need to lean more into that, or somebody needs to focus more into that, because maybe that's where the sales are. So on the production side, we're if our full capacity is, say, 3,000-ish barrels, we're at about 2,000 right now with what we have. So there's still 50% growth able to be produced in that space without really investing any more money on the production side. You just need to sell that beer.
Yeah.
So if somebody who knows that, like, or a brewer with a business partner that is very sales savvy, can come in and just tag team that, and increase the revenue in production while also just driving more people to the tap room, it's not a very far-fetched scenario where this is a very profitable business. But it's going to take the dedication and time to get there.
Yeah. So what is an example of a version of this business selling? So, like, we've talked, obviously, outside of this conversation on the YouTube channel. But what is a version of this business selling? Like we've talked about, like there's asset sale, there's share sale, equity sale, or whatever. What are the different options for somebody to buy this?
Yeah, that's something we've been trying to understand, like what is a buyer looking for and what can we offer and how can we structure that. So there's kind of two different structures that we're looking at, and we have one that's definitely more preferred than the other because of reasons that I'll get into. But there's somebody able to just come in and say, just I'll buy all your equipment, I'll buy your brand, and I don't want any of the liability to go with it. I'm just going to take these things and as an asset sale and just start fresh with my new company, with this new company that then owns it all
on site though, in that area, in the facility.
Yeah, sorry. So a new business entity that owns all this stuff. That's just
assuming the rent liability of whatever that space is, and then and then starting a new brand or whatever. Which, caveat here, I mentioned this in another video about like selling breweries that are up for sale and people that are interested. I put out a survey if you're interested in starting a brewery, and I got the feedback, and people were like, "Oh, I want to buy a brewery. I'd like to buy the equipment and move it to the ideal location," which is totally fair, makes a ton of sense. But the huge inherent value in these sales is you don't have to permit or re-permit, license, build out, get all the equipment to the place, rig it up, hope that it works. You have a turnkey, like this facility makes beer on a production scale, but also has a tap room. So just wanted to clarify that.
Within all these scenarios, that is the value, is that this is a fully functioning thing, permitted, that you don't need to necessarily have like completely new agreements for everything. It's like all the attorney's fees and is just already baked into it. So then it's a matter of either just buying all the assets outright and versus, which I think is, and I would love to know more about this if people like agree or disagree, but doing a stock sale where they essentially buy, the ownership of our business, Schaefer Young LLC, DBA Blue Owl Brewing, and all the agreements, all the permits are already in the name that they're in right now. Like you don't have to re-permit for TABC, TTB, the distribution agreement, the landlord agreement. But that takes on liabilities, but it also comes at a more reduced kind of asking price. Yeah. So to me, it seems like put a little cash, pay a little cash for the stock sale, take on the liability of the Schaefer Young LLC, and invest a little bit more money into the things that we were talking about, and just hit the ground running with your new, fresh ideas and capital that can easily turn this around.
Yeah. What do you ideally want to see? Like, would you like somebody to carry on the like Blue Owl legacy, the brand, or like, would you like somebody to come in and just start from scratch and not from a financial perspective? Like, what would you like to see in that space?
Yeah, I really would like to see somebody come along and carry on the brand. I like the idea of like fresh blood and fresh ideas and people coming in and saying like, okay, here's where we've been that got us to here. Now these are the ideas, and this is where we're gonna take that brand. So preferably, I want somebody to come in and get the brand, get the fully functioning brewery, and start running with it like on day one. No issues with changing permits or changing leases or things like that, just come in and start brewing. And I think that's the scenario that would suit them the best, the buyer, as well as us, just because it's easier for us just to, change our ownership structure. Like the structure is still the same, it's just the percent ownership has changed. And that to me just sounds very win-win. And we're very flexible on this whole thing because we want that win-win scenario. Again, nobody's looking to get rich. We just kind of want the things that we cared about, that we grew and built, to be carried on and taken in different directions, but not just dissolving into thin air.
Well, all those things seem reasonable. This is not something that's like a knee-jerk reaction. I know you've kind of mentioned it to me in passing before, and this isn't something that's going to happen immediately. So what's the timeline that you think that you're looking to sell this?
Kind of as soon as possible. Our current lease, we still have 12 months of our current lease, which is actually a really good lease, below market kind of thing, because we've been locked in for the last 10 years. Additionally, we have an SBA loan that was refinanced during the pandemic and has an insanely low interest rate and great terms. And if somebody takes those things over, then just kind of keeps things moving. It would be amazing if this could kind of wrap up before the end of the year. It's not super complicated, the sale of it. It seems kind of straightforward, and it's not a huge amount of money. People can buy your average house in Austin for less money than they could, or for more money than just buying a brewery, here in Austin. So the goal is to try to get somebody in here and running in the next few months.
Cool. All right. Well, that's kind of all the stuff I wanted to talk about as far as the sale is concerned. But is there anything? What's next for Blue Owl? What do you do if it sells?
Oh, I don't fucking know any of that stuff. But but to wrap up, put a little bow on the rest of it would be contacting us at info.
Yeah, that makes sense.
At info at Blue Owl Brewing for our sales perspective or prospectus, which is very.
You can contact for the sales perspective too. We'll give you a whole thing.
Got a lot of perspective.
Give you a whole PDF on it.
Just we're very honest about here's the strengths, here's the weaknesses. The right person would have these things, and you'll be set up, we hope, for success. So getting the sales prospectus, coming in and talking to us about where we are, getting some of the more of the details about the finances if you have questions, and letting us know what your plans are so that we could possibly structure it or just offer help in various ways to kind of see you off to success. That would be our goal. And yeah, I don't, people keep asking, asking,
what's the number?
Oh no, I was
okay.
I was going to say what's next, but the number we'll just broadly say is somewhere between 300,000 and 750,000.
Yeah. So everybody out there wants to know what's the number, but there's a lot of contingencies. I'm that way as well. I want to know the number.
I'm that way too.
Yeah, everybody's that way.
Sure.
But it is more complex, and depending on the type of sale and what the outline of the agreement is, it's not a cut and dry number. But $300,000 to $700,000. But if you act now, buy today, and you can
two
prove
breweries for the price of one.
It's gonna happen.
This is just devolving into chaos.
And if this video gets 1 million views, I will buy the brewery. So go ahead and share this, like it, send it along. Anything else you want to say about Blue Owl or just in general?
What's next for you, Andy?
I don't know. Trying to figure it out. I may be doing some more consulting. I'm probably going to build some other side business in the beer industry. This conversation is kind of an impetus for starting another, I don't know if it's going to be a newsletter platform, but something that's going to be like all beer stuff together. I'd like if other breweries are looking to sell and I can connect them to people that are interested. That survey that I put out had a lot of interesting insight. And so I don't know. I'm just kind of like trying to figure it out, just like everybody. What am I going to do when I grow up?
But yeah, this is a good example of like people in the industry, because we love the industry. And even if this isn't perfect for us now and we have to like turn to do other things, we want the industry to be awesome and to have another generation of like cool people just trying to do something cool. So if we can keep that going, that would be probably the best possible scenario.
Agreed. And as I've matured, because that was my goal initially when I got into the industry. Yeah, it was to mature. But when the passion fades and you start thinking about the like financial aspects of running a business, it's definitely disheartening to be in this industry where it's like, oh, there's challenges, the tides have shifted, it's changed, but I'm like, I think a lot of the negative aspects of operating these businesses in this industry are the startup costs, are the like unaccounted for build out costs, time not in operation, extra installation costs, all that shit is usually adding like hundreds of thousands of dollars to the top line or whatever, a part of the P&L. And these opportunities where you have an established, already built, successful operating brewery is like a good opportunity. So I hope that somebody is interested. If y'all are interested, again, hit up Jeff. What's the email address?
info@Blue Owl Brewing.
info@blueowlbrewing.com, I'm assuming. And yeah, so hit him up if you're interested. If you're not interested, hit me up and let me know that this guy sucks. I'll pass it along to him, and I'll print off every negative comment on a piece of white paper and put it up in his bedroom over here. So that's it. That's the interview. I don't know if you have anything else, but
no,
I'm going to drink another one of these beers.
Nailed it.
Bye.